So we have another great session coming up, and we have our next speaker for today. Dilip is Jan Jean. I hope and he's a co-founder from Linkros. Hi, welcome.
Hello, my name is Jean, and I'm super excited to be there.
Thank you, thank you. He's going to be talking to us about how we investigate fraud using Azure Cosmos DB. So I know this is going to be exciting. So I have my whole, investigative cap on and to listen.
Awesome. So let's kick things off. I'm going to be talking about investigating fraud with Azure Cosmos DB today. My name is Jean, and I'm one of the co-founders of Linkurious, a startup that specializes in helping folks bust fraud and money laundering networks. So first, a bit of an agenda. I will explain briefly why graph analytics and anti-fraud are really a match made in heaven. Then I will be doing a bit of an introduction to our Linkurious Enterprise product. After that, I will do a demo to showcase in practice to combine Linkurious Enterprise and Azure Cosmos DB in an anti-fraud scenario. So let's kick things off. First, today's criminals are smart and getting smarter, and they know how to bypass existing fraud and compliance processes, at least the smart ones. And they have really a bunch of tactics for that. Sometimes they work as a group to exploit a scheme that works. Sometimes they break down suspicious transactions in small chunks to fly under the radar. They also use opaque corporate structures with lots of companies, some of them headquartered in offshore banking centers, to obfuscate who the true owners of a given entity are. And finally, they also use synthetic identities by mixing together pieces of personal information to create fake identities. So they really have a bunch of tactics that they can use to bypass the existing controls. The common thread across all of these tactics is that if you don't have a full understanding of the context surrounding a client or surrounding a transactions, it's really hard to uncover what's going on. And here in this slide, you have a bit of an example of that. You can see a seemingly normal client. And maybe if I look at that seemingly normal client in isolation, maybe just that person, his date of birth, his latest transactions, things of that nature, it's going to appear like a good normal client. But if I'm interested in the connections, in the context around that person, I see that it's that this person is connected to an order, to a transactions, and ultimately to a fraudster. And this insight, the fact that this seemingly normal client is actually connected to a potential criminal, that should help me reassess how I'm perceiving the risk of the client and potentially upgrade that risk level. So once again, it's really imperative to have an understanding of the context surrounding clients and transactions to uncover the schemes used by smart criminals to defraud bank and financial institutions. The thing is, it's changing. It's changing for a number of reasons. First, traditionally, in a lot of institutions, there's simply too much focus on simple thresholds and anomalies. Things such as how many transactions have happened in the last N days, or is this in line with the client's past behaviors? That type of analytics really do not take advantage of the context that we just mentioned. Another big pain point is that the suspicious connections that are so important are rarely uncovered. Both the analytics and the tools that are made available to the end users to visualize the data are typically focused on narrow aspects of the available data. Maybe they're looking at just the transactions or just the personal information, and it's really siloed in terms of an approach. And then that means that it's really up to the investigators to explore the various ways clients can be connected to one another and to other entities in order to make decisions about whether a particular behavior on alert is suspicious or not, and also to spot anomalies. And finally, there's just too much false positives. A lot of anti-financial crime teams are spending too much time and too much of their thin resources chasing false positives instead of adapting to new threats. So really, there are a number of challenges that are getting in the way of organizations that want to put context at the center of their anti-fraud approach. The good news is that Azure Cosmos DB and Graph Analytics can help connect the dots and help anti-financial crime teams understand the connections across the various data silos to understand the context around any client, any transaction, and with this information, spot suspicious relationships and potential fraud or money launderers. So that's why we, at Linkers, we are so excited by Azure Cosmos DB and its graph capabilities. And we have built a product called Linkers Enterprise. So this is an investigation platform. It can be connected to Azure Cosmos DB in minutes. And with this tool, anti-financial crime teams can very easily search their data, explore it dynamically, and ultimately unmask fraud and money laundering networks. All of that in a collaborative and secure environment, which is very important for effective teamwork. Here you can see a bit of a screenshot of the Linkers Enterprise UI, and we can see, about your client, Gardenia Red, and what it is connected to, plus some information about that client that we are currently looking at. So that's really what the Linkers Enterprise UI looks like. And with this software, all clients are able to accelerate their investigations and uncover fraud and money laundering rings that would otherwise go unnoticed. So here are some of the key capabilities of Linkers Enterprise. First, there's Graph UI, which is powered by Ogma or JavaScript graph visualization library. It leverages WebGL to make it possible to display and interact with thousands of nodes on the screen at the same time. We also provide a search engine backed by Azure Search, with which you can easily search for nodes and edges in a very intuitive way. You can also filter the data, slice and dice it based on time, space, quantitative properties, and more. You can also collaborate and save and share visualizations across users. We also provide the ability to turn repetitive or recurring investigation workflows into buttons and forms via what we call query templates. And finally, all of that is secure with the ability to define fine-grained access rights and support for Active Directory, Azure ID, and a single sign-on and of course, SSL. So that's it in terms of a quick introduction to Linkers Enterprise. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about how to combine Azure Cosmos DB and Linkers Enterprise. So here is a bit of a schema where it all starts with legacy systems, with internal data, external data. This data needs to be prepared and moved to Azure Cosmos DB. So you can use something like Azure Data Fabric to handle that type of workload. So that's one possibility. We also have clients that are using tools such as Azure Databricks to also leverage machine learning capabilities and enrich the data with properties representing the riskiness of a client or transactions. At the end of the day, all of this information it needs to be put into Azure Cosmos DB, and then that can be. Then you can plug Linkers Enterprise to Azure Cosmos DB. And it's a very simple process. It can take a few minutes. Then you need to configure the access rights to make sure that the right persons have access to the right information. You can also set up some alerts, some query templates based on your requirements. And once it's done, your end users can very easily leverage the data and start uncovering new insights. So Linkers Enterprise is really an accelerator. It can help turn the data that you have in Azure Cosmos DB into something that can be used on a day-to-day basis by any members of your investigation team. So that's it for a quick overview of how to leverage Azure Cosmos DB and Linkers Enterprise. Now I'm going to go through a bit of a demo of using Linkers Enterprise to uncover fraud and money laundering networks. In this demo, we are going to use a dummy data set representing what a bank can have about its clients. So in this dummy data set, we will have clients. We will have some personal information related to those clients, such as emails, IP addresses, phone numbers, and addresses. We will also be looking at financial transactions, folks moving money around. For the purpose of this demo, we are going to play the role of a fraud analyst. We've been notified that a particular client called River Wisdom is acting suspicious and hasn't been paying back a loan that she has, and we want to investigate her to understand whether something fishy is going on, or if we are just facing a small payment delay issue. So we are going to be using Linkers Enterprise to do that, and we will see how it makes it possible to really dive into the Azure Cosmos DB data to uncover insights, all of that with very limited coding knowledge. So let's get started. I'm going to switch to another screen. So this is the Linkers Enterprise UI. Right now I'm connected to Cosmos DB instance. I'm just going to show you how it works. So this is the interface that is used to configure Cosmos DB. It's fairly simple. You provide an endpoint and your credentials plus some extra information, and you can get started. So it's very easy to set up Linkers Enterprise and to connect it to an Azure Cosmos DB instance. Going back to the visualization now. I mentioned that we are going to investigate a client called River Wisdom. So let's type some text. There's fuzzy matching. So it means that as we type, we see new results pop up. So this is the result that I'm interested in, River Wisdom. I can see where the match happened. So we have a full match on the full name, for example, partial match on the last name and on the first name. I can click. I can see the results. I can see on the left a bunch of information related to River Wisdom, such as a country. So River Wisdom as United States as a country. Full name is River Wisdom, and so on and so forth. Of course, all of this information is entirely customizable, and it depends on the data that you have. What is interesting right now for me is that little 5 next to River Wisdom. So it represents the number of undisclosed relationships that River has with other entities. I can double click and retrieve all of these connections at once. If I want to, I can also be more fine-grained about my exploration. Maybe instead of retrieving everything, I just want to retrieve the bank account or the IP address. So it's fairly easy for me to be strategic about how I want to explore the graph, which is super important when dealing with a large complex graph. Okay, going back now. I'm doing what I just did. We also provide within the interface the ability to automate workflows via Gremlin and what we call create templates. And I'm going to show you an example of that just now. So we are looking at River Wisdom. and I'm going to click here on an inquiry, and I'm going to type to click on N level of contacts, and I'm going to look at a form with a number of ops that's already suggested. I can switch it, but the free is fine. And that query template is going to give me the 3 level contacts of River Wisdom. I'm going to click on Run. And there it is. I can see that River Wisdom is connected to a Gardenia ret by via this address and indirectly via these two bank accounts. So it's really a way to automate this type of query. And now I'm going to show you what it looks like in the background. So this is the query that we called. I'm going to click on View Details, and we can see what it looks like, this query. So this is some gremlin code, and we can see that there are some parameters that are left to the end user to specify. So, for example, the end user is providing a starting point, which is a node. Then the end user is also providing a number, which is the number of ops. And then you can see the actual query that works with these parameters. So the query templates are really a way for developers and data scientists to turn, to leverage Gremlin to automate some of the investigation workflows and make that really seamless for the end users who can call these advanced functionalities with the click of a button. I'm going to pull some more data into the equation. So I'm selecting everything, expanding. This time I'm doing that manually, I guess. And now we have some more data on the screen. I can zoom in on a part of the network. For example, I can see that one client or this server one. What is interesting to me right now is really the fact that we started off with just one person, River Wisdom, and we can see that this client is actually connected to multiple other persons. So we have Gardenia Ret, Aline Royal, Philippa Life, and Mark Jordana. And these persons are connected across transactions, which is fine, but also across personal information, such as a shared address here, a shared IP address there, another address here, and a phone number there. And this is more suspicious and potentially indicative of a network of fraudsters. We are recycling pieces of information to create multiple profiles, multiple client profiles, in order to ask for loans with the intention of not paying them back. So that's an interesting insights that I'm getting out of my exploration of the graph. If I want to, since there's a bunch of data on the screen, I can use different ways of representing it to see if there are some interesting things that come up. So I can plot the data on a map. So I can see that we have 2 addresses located somewhere in the Chicago region. Okay. I can also use the filter interface within Enterprise to remove some of the non-relevant nodes or relationships. So maybe I'm not interested in the non-financial part of the network. So I'm removing the IP addresses, the addresses, maybe the loans, let's say, the phone numbers, just to focus on people and bank accounts. I can be more fine-grained about that. Maybe out of all of these bank accounts, I want to locate the ones with the most transactions, or the biggest total amount. I can make this sort of choices. Here, for example, I'm going to filter the bank accounts with the lowest total transactions to locate the one with the most transactions. So this one and this one have free transactions. So it's really a way to focus on the important part of the graph, and you can do that as an analyst without having any knowledge of graph theory or graph analytics. Closing the panel now. You can also group relationships. If you have multiple relationships between any two nodes, you can group them to make it easier to read the graph. You have access to a design panel where you can customize the look of the visualization, add some details such as icons, colors to convey as much information as possible via the visualization UI. And if you have uncovered something of interest, like we have right now, we can save the result. Let's go with a suspicious case title, I guess, saving the visualization now. That visualization that we have created, we can export it to a number of formats such as Excel, PNG, SVG, so that it can be reused elsewhere. Typically, in a report or PowerPoint presentation about what we have uncovered. It's also possible to actually share the visualization with another person. Let's say I'm working with Wong for my team. I can give her access to what we have created with the ability to modify or even modify and share. I can do all of that really via a simple UI. Going back to the dashboard now. So I hope that I've been able to explain and showcase very concretely how Linkers Enterprise can be used to dive into your data and quickly uncover fraud and money laundering networks. Going back to my presentation. Okay, so there are really three reasons why all clients are choosing to combine Azure Cosmos DB and Linkers Enterprise. The first one is just the fact that we deliver faster investigations, 10x faster investigations with graph visualization. It's possible to understand the context around any situation, no matter how complex the underlying data really is. And the difference that it makes is that it becomes possible to act quickly and with confidence instead of wasting time choosing information scattered across different tabs and across lists, bar charts, and so on. So that's one big advantage. Another advantage is that it becomes possible with Linkers Enterprise to leverage graph analytics to catch and to go beyond simple rules to catch professional fraudsters. The traditional anti-financial crime rules can be bypassed by sophisticated criminals, and with graph analytics, you can uncover complex fraud and money laundering schemes that would otherwise go unnoticed. And finally, it's super easy to get started. So there's a built-in compatibility with Azure Cosmos DB. And right now we are rolling out in the Azure Cosmos, in the Azure Marketplace, the ability to deploy Linkers Enterprise. This is right now in beta, and you can contact us if you want to get access to this new offering. Our software is trusted daily by thousands of investigators worldwide. We are working, for example, with Wells Fargo, with Dun & Bradstreet, and with the Attorney General Office of New York, among others. Thank you very much. If you want to learn more about Linkerius, or if you want to try Linkers Enterprise, you can reach out to contact@linkerius.com. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jean. I mean, that was really amazing session. I really love the, how you talked about Azure Cosmos DB and, graph analytics, helping, unmask fraud with, laundry rings. I guess I understand the challenges too sometimes with we're talking about false positives and like suspicious anomalies. If we're not able to catch that, it kind of like leads up to, having those false positives. So I guess one question I have before going forward, I did see something which had like, where you mentioned like the number of hops. You mind explaining what that means?
Yeah, sure. So when you're in a graph, you can go from one node to another one by via a relationship, and that's that's called making a up. So when you are looking at nodes that are two ups away from your starting point, you are really looking at nodes that have a couple of intermediary steps, I guess, in the graph.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I like that too, because one question I had before, and then you kind of like explained it, was I was curious about if two people were from the same like IP connections, how you're able to handle that. And I see like having that workflow where you can see people from the same IPs and having all of those connections, seeing if they're connected. And then just like the map view too, like the visualization is awesome. Having that map view where you can narrow down on the streets or be able to filter based on the person or the accounts, and just seeing how all of this is, made possible with, having an easy compatibility with, Cosmos DB, I think was awesome. And thanks a lot. Dilip?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Gene, I think this was very insightful. And fraud is always very critical for financial organizations. One question I had, or more of a curiosity, is how do you get the data? What is the source for all this data? Do you generate data on your own, which the banks will, when they sign up for your enterprise or whatever, right? Do they get access to all that data, or how do you actually make sure that this meaningful data is available with you to do the analysis?
Sure, great question. So with clients, I mean, we don't have any proprietary data at Linkers. And really, our clients are mostly focusing on leveraging the data that they already have. Think personal information about clients, such as address, email, phone numbers, that type of things, or transactions. And I would say that's where there's the most value, and that's the best place to start, because there are really some low-hanging fruits in this data, and then the more advanced organizations are really looking into adding to that external data. So there are a bunch of data providers out there that can give you access to information about company ownership. Think this company has this and this person as owners, that type of things. Just like in cybersecurity, you can get access to information about various threats. So it's more complex to get this external data and mixing that with your internal data. Typically, there are some entity resolution changes there, but it can create a lot of value.
Sure. I think that's a big thing. Owning the data and sharing it in a way which is going to help financial institutions prevent fraud. I think that is also a bigger challenge, and I'm sure that there are a lot of people thinking about how to do that more effectively.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks a
Thank
lot,
you,
John.
Jane.
Thank you, John.
Thank you so much.